The humans were traveling through space in a ship that glowed softly under the stars. They had heard stories about the Class 15 planet they were going to, a world so dangerous that no life could survive there for long. Many aliens had called it a murder world, and they whispered about it with fear. They said it was full of creatures that could kill in seconds, storms that could tear mountains apart, and plants that could poison with just a touch. The humans, however, had a curiosity that was stronger than fear. They looked out of the windows of their ship and saw the planet getting bigger, the colors of its sky dark and strange. They had trained for years for this kind of challenge. They knew that this would not be easy, but they were ready to face what no one else could. The aliens had been watching the humans for some time. They thought humans were fragile. They thought that the humans' soft bodies and weak defenses would not last long on such a deadly planet. Some of the aliens laughed quietly and made bets on how long the humans would survive. Others watched with a mixture of fear and excitement. They were curious. Humans had something the aliens could not understand. They could take risks. They could act in ways that were unexpected. They could keep hope when all seemed lost. That was why the aliens decided to send them to this planet. They wanted to see if humans could survive where everyone else had failed. As the ship entered the atmosphere, the humans felt the air press against the windows. The colors outside were strange, like fire and ice mixed together. Clouds of green and red twisted across the sky, and flashes of light streaked from the storms that raged below. The ship shook slightly, but the humans stayed calm. They worked together to keep the ship steady, adjusting controls and checking sensors. Every one of them knew their role. They knew that panic could mean death. They had learned long ago that fear could be dangerous. But careful planning and calm minds were tools that could protect them even in the worst situations. When the ship finally landed on the rocky surface, dust and strange gases swirled around them. The ground seemed alive, moving slightly under their feet. Strange sounds echoed from deep within the rocks, and they felt the weight of the planet pressing down as if the world itself wanted to push them away. They took their first steps carefully. Every movement was measured. They set up small devices to measure air quality, radiation, and the presence of dangerous creatures. They were scientists, explorers, and survivors all at once. They had come prepared to learn, to adapt, and to survive. They began to explore the area near their ship. The rocks were sharp, and strange plants with long, twisting vines moved slightly, as if they could sense the humans' presence. The team members noted everything. They marked safe paths, found sources of water, and identified which plants might be poisonous. Some of the plants made small sounds when touched, almost like whispers. The humans learned quickly to move around quietly. They had to, because they could feel that something was watching. They did not know what it was yet, but the feeling of being observed was strong. At night, the planet changed. The sky turned a deep purple, and glowing eyes appeared in the distance. Creatures they had never seen began to move silently across the terrain. The humans huddled together near the ship, making small fires in controlled areas to keep themselves safe. They communicated with each other in soft voices, sharing observations and theories about what might be out there. They realized that everything on this planet was trying to test them. Even the wind seemed sharper, the rocks harder, and the darkness heavier. Yet they did not give up. They took notes, drew sketches, and made plans. Every challenge was a puzzle, and humans liked puzzles. As the days passed, the humans encountered more dangers. One of the explorers stepped on a rock that moved under his weight, revealing a pit below filled with venomous insects. Another nearly touched a plant that sprayed a cloud of toxic spores. Each time they reacted quickly, using tools, nets, and protective clothing to stay safe. They learned from every mistake and celebrated each small success. Every night they gathered to talk about what they had learned, sharing ideas and making strategies for the next day. They had no illusions about the dangers, but they also had no doubt about their ability to face them together. The aliens continued to watch. They had expected fear, chaos, and failure. They had expected the humans to be overwhelmed quickly. But day after day, the humans adapted. They built small shelters from the strange materials around them. They found ways to purify water and grow small amounts of food. They created signals to warn each other when something dangerous approached. The aliens began to whisper among themselves. Some were angry that their assumptions were wrong. Others were quietly impressed. The humans were showing something that no one had predicted. They were surviving where all others had died. One morning, the humans discovered a cave. It was hidden behind a wall of twisted vines, and the entrance was small. They approached it carefully. The air inside smelled sharp and strange, but it was breathable. They decided to explore it. Inside, the cave walls glittered with crystals that reflected their lights in thousands of tiny rainbows. It was beautiful, but they remained alert. Every sound echoed, every shadow seemed alive. They realized that the planet was full of surprises. Some were dangerous and some were beautiful. The humans understood that survival was not just about avoiding death. It was about understanding the world around them, using intelligence and courage together to make the impossible possible. The first week passed, and the humans had mapped a small area around their landing site. They had set up safe zones, traps for dangerous creatures, and observation points. They had learned which paths were safe to walk and which plants to avoid. They had begun to understand the rhythm of the planet. The storms had patterns, the creatures had habits, and the air had zones that were more dangerous than others. Every discovery was a victory. Every success gave them confidence. The aliens who were watching began to take notes themselves, trying to understand how humans could think, react, and survive in ways that were so different from any species they had ever seen. Despite the dangers, the humans laughed and told stories around their small fires at night. They shared memories from home, dreams for the future, and hopes for what they might find on this strange world. Their courage was quiet, but it was strong. They did not brag or boast. They simply faced the world as it was, one step at a time. They respected the planet, but they did not fear it. They accepted the challenges, and they met each one with intelligence, patience, and determination. The aliens watching could not understand it. They had expected panic, but instead they saw discipline and courage. They had expected fear, but instead they saw hope and unity. By the end of the first part of their journey, the humans had proven something important. They had shown that even on a planet designed to kill, even in the face of impossible odds, humans could survive if they worked together, stayed calm, and thought creatively. They had not yet faced the greatest dangers, but they were ready. They had learned the first lesson of the Murderworld. Survival was possible, but only if you respected the world, understood its dangers, and trusted each other completely. And so, as the first sun rose over the jagged horizon of the Class 15 planet, the humans stood together, ready to face whatever came next. They were explorers, survivors, and learners. They were ordinary in appearance, but extraordinary in spirit. And even though the aliens had doubted them, even though the world itself seemed determined to destroy them, the humans had already shown that they were capable of surviving the impossible. The humans woke to a sky that was unlike any they had seen before. The colors of the clouds changed constantly, swirling in patterns that seemed alive. Light flashed here and there, sometimes bright, sometimes soft, casting shadows that moved on their own. The ground beneath them was rough, but it seemed to have a rhythm, a pulse that made each step feel uncertain. They knew they had to move carefully, but they also knew that exploration was the key to survival. Every corner of this planet held something new, and every step could bring danger or discovery. They packed their small supplies and prepared to move farther from the ship. The air was heavy, and each breath made their lungs work harder than usual. Strange plants brushed against their arms, some sticky, some sharp, some moving as if trying to touch them. The humans studied everything. They touched lightly, smelled cautiously, and watched for signs of life. Every reaction mattered. If they ignored the smallest detail, it could mean injury or worse. They moved in groups, keeping close and always watching each other. They had learned that on this planet, teamwork was more important than strength or speed. As they moved, they encountered creatures that were almost invisible. Some blended perfectly with the rocks and plants, while others hid in shadows that shifted with the light. One human reached out to pick up a glowing fruit, and a small predator leapt out from behind a rock. It had sharp claws and eyes that reflected the human's lights. But the humans did not panic. One threw a small net over it, while another used a stick to guide it away. The creature struggled but eventually ran off, and the humans recorded everything. They were careful not to underestimate anything. Every movement of the planet could teach them something. They discovered a river, its water moving fast and glowing faintly in the darkness. The humans knelt and tested it. Surprisingly, it was safe to drink after using their filters. They used the river as a guide, moving along its banks to see where it led. Along the way, they noticed strange rocks that hummed when touched. Some made high-pitched sounds, some low. They realized that the planet itself was active, almost like it could communicate in ways they did not yet understand. They marked the location on their maps and decided to study it later. Every discovery was important, and they made sure to remember each detail. Night on the planet was more dangerous than the day. The temperature dropped sharply, and creatures that hid during the daylight began to emerge. The humans set up small camps using lights that did not attract predators, and fires in controlled areas to keep themselves warm. They communicated in whispers, sharing ideas about how to move safely. They discovered that the creatures had patterns. Some hunted in groups, some alone. Some were aggressive only when threatened. The humans learned to watch first, act second. Every encounter became a lesson in patience, observation, and strategy. One day, while exploring a dense forest of tall, twisting plants, one of the humans found a small animal caught in a trap of vines. It was not dangerous, but it struggled. The humans decided to free it, careful not to get caught themselves. The creature ran off, but it left behind a strange seed in the dirt. They picked it up and examined it, wondering if it could be used for food or medicine. Every detail was a potential advantage. They understood that survival was not only about avoiding danger, but also about using what the planet offered wisely. The aliens observing them were surprised. They had expected humans to fail quickly, but the humans continued to adapt. They built small shelters from the vines and rocks, creating spaces that were safe from predators and storms. They fashioned tools from the materials around them, simple but effective. They worked together to make the shelters stronger and more comfortable. The aliens whispered to each other, some angry, some impressed. They had underestimated humans' ability to think creatively under pressure. The humans began to notice patterns in the planet's storms. They realized that some clouds brought lightning, some brought acid rain, and some were harmless. They learned to read the sky and predict what would happen next. One evening, a storm arrived suddenly, with winds that could have ripped their shelters apart. But the humans were ready. They reinforced their structures and waited out the storm. They huddled together, sharing warmth and keeping spirits high. They laughed quietly, telling stories to distract themselves from the danger. They knew fear could be deadly, so they faced the storm with calm minds. During another exploration, they discovered a valley filled with creatures that seemed gentle but were very strong. The humans observed from a distance, noting their behaviors, movements, and reactions. They realized that even dangerous places had life that could be understood and respected. They mapped the valley carefully, deciding not to disturb the creatures but to learn from them. Every step taught them more about how to survive in a world where every day was a test. Food was always a concern. The humans tried different plants and insects, learning which were safe and which were not. Some plants had strange tastes or textures, but most were edible after processing. They cooked simple meals using fire and tools, sharing food and energy among the group. Every meal became a moment to bond, to rest, and to prepare for the next challenge. They knew that survival was not only physical but also mental. They needed to keep their minds sharp, their spirits strong, and their trust in each other unbroken. One day they encountered a massive predator. It had long legs, sharp claws, and eyes that seemed to see through the darkness. It moved quickly and silently, surrounding the humans. The humans froze for a moment, but then they acted. They used nets, lights, and noise to distract it. One human climbed a tree to gain a higher view, while another guided the predator toward a trap they had prepared earlier. The predator struggled but eventually left. The humans breathed heavily but stayed calm. They had survived another test, learning more about the planet and themselves. As the days turned into weeks, the humans became experts at moving safely. They learned to read the land, the creatures, and even the weather. They noticed that some plants could heal minor wounds, some rocks could be used for tools, and some creatures could signal danger before it arrived. They documented everything carefully, creating a mental map of safety, danger, and resources. They began to feel more confident but never careless. Respect for the planet and attention to detail kept them alive. The humans also discovered small caves and hidden areas that offered shelter from storms and predators. Inside these caves, they found crystals that glowed softly. They examined them and realized they could be used for light and energy. They experimented carefully, learning to harness the resources without angering the planet's inhabitants. Every discovery was a small victory, a way to make life on this hostile world a little safer and more manageable. Even when things went wrong, the humans stayed together. When a sudden rockfall blocked a path, they found another way. When a strange gas made the air heavy, they moved to higher ground. When a predator threatened a companion, they worked as a team to distract and escape. Every challenge strengthened their bond. They trusted each other completely, knowing that alone they would not survive. Together they could face anything. The aliens continued to watch, their assumptions shaken. They had expected chaos, but they saw order. They had expected fear, but they saw courage. They had expected failure, but they saw humans thriving where none could. Some aliens began to wonder if they had underestimated the strength of humans entirely. They whispered quietly, taking notes and trying to understand what made humans so different from other species. As another night fell, the humans gathered around their small fire. They shared stories of home, hopes for the future, and dreams of what they might achieve on this planet. They laughed quietly, their voices soft in the darkness. They felt the weight of the planet pressing down, but they also felt the strength of their unity. They knew that each day was a challenge, but they also knew that they were learning, adapting, and surviving. They had come to a world where death seemed certain, yet they were alive, stronger, and wiser with every passing hour. By the end of this part of their journey, the humans had shown that survival was possible even in the most dangerous conditions. They had learned the patterns of the planet, the behavior of the creatures, and the rhythm of the storms. They had built shelters, found food, and created tools. They had learned to move quietly, to observe carefully, and to act decisively. They had proven that humans could survive where no one else could, using intelligence, courage, and teamwork to turn the impossible into reality. And as the first light of dawn spread across the jagged landscape, the humans prepared for the next day. They were explorers, learners, and survivors. They were ordinary in form but extraordinary in spirit. The Class 15 planet was dangerous, but the humans had already shown that they could face its challenges. They were ready for whatever came next, confident in their skills, their unity, and their determination to survive. The humans woke to a cold, quiet morning. Mist hung low over the jagged rocks, and the ground sparkled as if tiny lights were trapped in the dirt. The air felt heavy, almost alive, and every step made a soft crunch. They moved slowly, careful not to disturb the small creatures that scurried unseen under the rocks and plants. They had learned to respect the planet, to watch and listen before acting. Every sound, every movement could mean danger or opportunity. They had learned to survive by being patient and alert, and each day brought a new lesson. As they moved further from their camp, they discovered a series of strange ridges that seemed almost like walls. They climbed carefully, testing each rock before putting their full weight on it. At the top, they could see more of the planet's dangerous landscape. Valleys stretched into darkness, rivers glowed faintly in the distance, and shadows moved in ways that did not match the wind. They realized that the planet itself was alive, reacting to their presence. But instead of fear, the humans felt excitement. They knew that understanding the land was the first step to survival. Every ridge, every valley could hold secrets, and they were ready to find them. They discovered a narrow canyon almost hidden between two cliffs. Strange vines covered the walls, some moving as if reaching for them. The humans moved slowly, touching the vines lightly and testing the ground with small tools. Suddenly, one of the vines twitched sharply and a creature jumped from the shadows. It had sharp teeth, glowing eyes, and claws that could tear through metal. The humans acted without hesitation. One threw a net, another distracted it with light, and a third guided it toward a trap they had already prepared. The predator struggled but eventually retreated, leaving the humans unharmed. They breathed quietly, recording every detail of the encounter. They knew that every creature had habits and weaknesses. Observing and learning could be the difference between life and death. The humans continued through the canyon, noticing small plants that gave off strange smells. Some were edible, some poisonous, and some had effects they could not yet understand. They tested carefully, sharing small pieces and watching for reactions. One of them accidentally touched a vine that sprayed a fine mist. His skin itched immediately and his breathing became heavy. The others acted quickly, using water and simple remedies to relieve the symptoms. They learned from the mistake and made notes to avoid similar hazards in the future. Each day, the humans gained more knowledge about the planet and their skills grew stronger. As they moved, they began to see signs of other creatures. Footprints in the soft soil, claw marks on rocks, and distant noises reminded them that they were not alone. The humans became experts at reading these signs. They could tell which direction a predator had gone, what it might be hunting, and how long it had been there. They learned to move quietly, to avoid leaving tracks, and to use the terrain to their advantage. Every day was a test of observation, patience, and quick thinking. They knew that the planet wanted to challenge them, but they were ready to meet the challenge. One afternoon, they came across a shallow lake. The water was warm and seemed safe to drink, but they tested it anyway, using filters and small instruments to check for toxins. As they rested by the water, they noticed strange plants along the shore. Some had long tendrils that moved in the wind. Others had bright colors that seemed to glow even in the sunlight. The humans studied them carefully. Some could be food, some medicine, and some might be useful in other ways. They collected samples, always careful not to disturb the balance of the planet. They had learned that survival was not just about avoiding danger, but also about using the world around them wisely. Night fell, and with it came the creatures that hunted in darkness. The humans set up small lights and simple alarms to alert them of approaching predators. They moved silently, keeping close to each other and to their camp. The sounds of the night were strange and frightening. Screeches, hisses, and growls echoed through the valleys, yet the humans remained calm. They had faced similar dangers before and had survived. Their confidence grew with each night they endured. They knew that courage and intelligence together could overcome fear and strength. One night, a large predator approached their camp. It was bigger than any they had seen before, with glowing eyes and sharp teeth that could crush bones. The humans acted quickly. They used nets, lights, and careful movements to distract it, while another human guided it toward a trap they had hidden earlier. The predator struggled but eventually retreated. The humans breathed heavily but remained alert. Every encounter made them stronger, sharper, and more aware of their surroundings. They knew that the planet would continue to test them, but they were ready for whatever came next. The aliens observing them were growing more surprised each day. They had expected chaos, panic, and failure. Instead, they saw humans thinking, learning, and adapting. They had expected fear, but instead they saw calmness, courage, and cooperation. The humans were proving that their strength was not just physical, but also mental and emotional. The aliens whispered among themselves, trying to understand how humans could survive in ways that no other species could. Some began to feel respect, even admiration for the creatures they had underestimated. The humans also discovered small caves and hidden areas that provided shelter from storms and predators. Inside the caves, they found crystals that glowed softly. They experimented with the crystals, using them for light and warmth. They tested carefully, making sure not to disturb the planet's balance. Every discovery was a small victory, a way to make life a little safer and easier. They learned to use the planet's resources wisely, understanding that survival was about both skill and respect for the world around them. Food remained a constant concern. The humans experimented with plants, insects, and small creatures. They learned which were safe to eat and which could cause illness. They shared their findings with each other, creating small meals that were nourishing and safe. Every meal was a moment of bonding, a way to share energy and hope. They knew that survival required not only strength but also trust and teamwork. Together, they could face any challenge. One day, they found a strange structure partially buried in the ground. It looked like it had been made by some intelligent being long ago. The humans approached carefully, examining the walls and markings. They could not understand all of it, but they realized that it was a shelter of some kind. They explored it carefully, noting the layout and possible dangers. The discovery excited them. It reminded them that the universe held many mysteries and that learning from the past could help them survive in the present. The humans continued to map the area around their camp. They marked safe paths, dangerous zones, and places where resources could be found. They shared their knowledge, making sure everyone in the group knew what to do in an emergency. Their teamwork was strong, and their trust in each other was unbreakable. They had learned that survival depended not only on individual skill, but also on cooperation, communication, and shared understanding. Storms became more frequent and stronger. The humans learned to predict them by observing the clouds, wind, and temperature. They built shelters that could withstand heavy winds, used nets and vines to protect themselves, and waited patiently for the storms to pass. They knew that the planet was testing them, but they also knew that preparation and intelligence could overcome even the most powerful forces. Every challenge made them stronger, more resilient, and more capable of facing the unknown. Despite the constant dangers, the humans found moments of wonder. They watched glowing plants, listened to strange animals, and marveled at the colors of the sky. They realized that even in a world designed to kill, beauty existed. They took time to appreciate it, knowing that hope and wonder were as important as strength and skill. These moments kept their spirits alive and reminded them why they had chosen to explore in the first place. Every encounter, every discovery, and every challenge taught them something new. They became experts at moving quietly, observing carefully, and acting decisively. They learned to read the land, the creatures, and the storms. They learned to trust each other completely, knowing that teamwork was the key to survival. They learned that fear could be managed, danger could be predicted, and intelligence could overcome strength. By the end of this part of their journey, the humans had grown stronger, wiser, and more confident. They had survived countless dangers, learned the patterns of the planet, and discovered resources that could help them live. They had proven that even in the deadliest places, humans could adapt, endure, and thrive. The aliens watching could no longer doubt them. Humans had shown courage, intelligence, and unity in a world where others would have failed. As the sun rose over the jagged landscape, the humans prepared for the next day. They were explorers, learners, and survivors. They were ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in spirit. They had faced impossible odds and continued to move forward, ready for whatever new challenges the Class 15 planet would bring. They had learned that survival was possible, not through strength alone, but through patience, intelligence, courage, and the bond they shared. The humans woke to a morning that felt colder than usual. The sky was dark and heavy with clouds that twisted and moved like living creatures. The ground was rough, filled with jagged rocks and plants that seemed to shiver in the wind. Every step they took was careful and deliberate. They had learned from experience that rushing could lead to accidents, and accidents on this planet could be deadly. They moved together, each watching the other, always alert for danger. As they walked, they noticed footprints that were unlike any they had seen before. They were large, deep, and uneven, as if made by a creature that could change its shape. The humans stopped and studied them. One of them knelt to examine the marks, noting the size and direction. They discussed quietly what kind of creature could make such tracks and how they might avoid it. They moved slowly, leaving marks of their own to track their path in case they needed to return quickly. Every step was careful, every decision deliberate. The humans reached a cliff that overlooked a deep valley. The valley was filled with strange plants that glowed faintly, and shadows moved among the trees in ways that did not match the wind. They could hear distant noises, some like hisses, some like cries, and some they could not identify at all. They realized that this valley was home to predators, and it would be dangerous to enter without a plan. They studied the terrain, looking for paths that were safe and areas that could be used as shelter if needed. They learned to respect the land and the creatures that lived there. As they began to move along the valley's edge, a sudden noise startled them. A creature larger than any they had seen before stepped out from behind a tree. It had long legs, sharp claws, and eyes that reflected their lights. The humans froze for a moment, then acted. One threw a net, another distracted it with light, and a third guided it toward a trap they had prepared earlier. The creature struggled but eventually retreated. The humans breathed quietly, recording every detail of the encounter. They had learned to act quickly, but always with intelligence and care. The humans continued to explore the valley, finding small streams and patches of plants that could be used for food. They tested each carefully, sharing small pieces and observing their effects. Some were safe, some caused mild discomfort, and some were dangerous. They learned to identify patterns, to know which plants could be trusted and which could not. Every discovery was valuable, and they took notes carefully. Survival on this planet was about knowledge, observation, and careful testing. Night fell, and with it came the dangers that only darkness could bring. The humans set up small lights and simple alarms to warn them of approaching predators. They huddled together, sharing warmth and watching the shadows. Strange noises echoed from the valley, and glowing eyes appeared in the distance. The humans remained calm. They had faced danger before and had survived. They knew that fear could be deadly, but courage and teamwork could overcome almost anything. One night, a sudden storm swept through the valley. Wind tore through the trees, rain fell in heavy sheets, and lightning flashed across the sky. The humans quickly reinforced their shelters, tying branches and vines together to protect against the worst of the storm. They huddled together, keeping their spirits up with stories and quiet laughter. The storm raged for hours, but they endured it. By the morning, the valley was wet and quiet, and the humans emerged stronger and more confident. They had faced nature itself and survived. As they explored further, they found caves and hidden areas that provided shelter from storms and predators. Inside the caves, crystals glowed softly, providing light and warmth. The humans experimented with the crystals, learning how to use them without disturbing the natural balance. They discovered small plants inside the caves that could be used for food or medicine. Every discovery added to their growing knowledge of the planet. They were learning not only to survive but to thrive. Food continued to be a constant concern. The humans experimented with plants, insects, and small animals, learning which were safe to eat and which were not. They shared meals quietly, taking care to ration their supplies. Every meal was an opportunity to rest, share knowledge, and strengthen their bond. They knew that teamwork and trust were as important as any tool or weapon. Together, they could face the dangers of this planet. Alone, they would not survive. One afternoon, they encountered a group of creatures that were strong but not immediately dangerous. The humans observed from a distance, noting their movements, behaviors, and patterns. They realized that even in the most dangerous places, some life could be studied and understood. They mapped the area carefully, deciding not to disturb the creatures but to learn from them. Every lesson they learned made them more prepared for the dangers that lay ahead. The aliens watching were growing more impressed. They had expected chaos, fear, and failure, but they saw calm, intelligence, and teamwork. Humans were surviving in ways that no other species could. The aliens whispered among themselves, trying to understand how humans could think and act in such a dangerous environment. Some began to feel respect and others curiosity. Humans were proving that their strength was more than physical. They had courage, intelligence, and the ability to adapt. The humans also discovered strange structures hidden in the landscape. Some looked like nests, others like shelters, and some had markings that suggested intelligence. They explored carefully, taking notes and avoiding dangers. They realized that the planet might have been home to intelligent life long ago. These discoveries added a new layer of understanding. They were learning not only to survive but also to respect the history of the planet. Storms grew stronger, and the humans had to adapt quickly. They learned to predict the weather by observing the clouds, wind, and temperature. They built stronger shelters, used vines and rocks to protect themselves, and waited patiently for storms to pass. Each challenge made them stronger, more resilient, and more capable of facing the unknown. They had learned that survival was not only about reacting, but also about anticipating, preparing, and adapting. Even in the midst of danger, the humans found moments of wonder. They watched glowing plants, strange animals, and the colors of the sky at sunrise and sunset. They realized that even a planet designed to kill could be beautiful. They took time to appreciate it, knowing that hope and curiosity were as important as strength and intelligence. These moments kept their spirits alive and reminded them why they had chosen this journey in the first place. Every day, the humans became better at moving quietly, observing carefully, and acting decisively. They learned to read the land, understand the creatures, and predict the storms. They learned to trust each other completely. They had discovered that intelligence, teamwork, and courage could overcome nearly any obstacle. They had survived countless dangers, mapped the terrain, and learned how to use the resources around them. They were stronger, wiser, and more confident with each passing day. By the end of this part of their journey, the humans had proven that survival was possible even in the deadliest conditions. They had adapted to the patterns of the planet, learned from every creature, storm, and plant, and strengthened their bonds as a team. They had turned a world meant to kill into a place where they could live, learn, and grow. The aliens observing them could no longer doubt their abilities. Humans had shown courage, intelligence, and unity in a world where failure seemed certain. As the first light of morning spread across the jagged landscape, the humans prepared for the next day. They were explorers, learners, and survivors. They were ordinary in form but extraordinary in spirit. They had faced impossible odds and continued to move forward, ready for whatever new challenges the Class 15 planet would bring. They had learned that survival depended not only on strength, but also on intelligence, patience, courage, and trust in each other. The humans were ready for whatever came next. The humans woke to a sky tinged with red and gold. The air smelled different, heavy with moisture and a faint metallic scent. They stepped carefully onto the rough ground, feeling the weight of the planet beneath their feet. Every movement was cautious, every step measured. They had learned that rushing could be dangerous, and that patience was often the key to survival. They moved together, keeping close and watching one another, ready for whatever the Class 15 planet might bring that day. As they explored further from their camp, they discovered a narrow valley surrounded by tall, jagged cliffs. The valley floor was covered with plants that seemed to sway even without wind. Strange noises echoed softly, some like whispers, some like cries. The humans moved carefully, testing the ground before putting their full weight down and touching plants lightly to see how they reacted. Every detail was important. They had learned to read the land, noticing patterns and signals that could warn them of danger. Suddenly, a low growl came from behind a cluster of rocks. The humans froze. A massive predator stepped out, its eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Its claws were long and its teeth sharp. The humans had faced creatures before, but this one was larger and faster than any they had seen. Without panicking, they split into roles. One threw a net, another used a bright light to distract it, and a third guided it toward a trap they had prepared earlier. The predator struggled but eventually fled. The humans exhaled quietly, recording every movement and reaction. They knew that understanding these creatures was as important as avoiding them. The humans continued through the valley, finding streams of water and patches of edible plants. They tested everything carefully, sharing small pieces and observing their effects. Some were safe, some caused minor discomfort, and some were dangerous. They learned to identify which plants could be trusted and which could not. Every discovery was valuable. They had realized that survival on this planet was about careful observation, experimentation, and learning from mistakes. Night brought new dangers. The creatures that hunted in darkness began to emerge, moving silently and swiftly. The humans set up small alarms and lights, remaining alert as they moved through the shadows. Strange cries echoed across the valley, and glowing eyes appeared in the distance. The humans did not panic. They had faced such dangers before and survived. They knew that teamwork, intelligence, and calmness were their greatest tools. Fear could lead to mistakes, and mistakes could mean death. During one night patrol, they discovered a small cave hidden behind thick vines. Inside, the walls glittered with crystals that gave off soft light. The humans examined them carefully, realizing the crystals could be used for illumination and even warmth. They found small plants inside the cave that could be used for food or medicine. Every discovery was important, and they documented it carefully. They understood that knowledge and preparation were essential to surviving on a planet as dangerous as this one. Food was always a concern. The humans experimented with different plants, insects, and small animals. They learned which were safe to eat and which could be harmful. They shared their findings with the group and made small, nourishing meals. Every meal was a chance to rest, bond, and gain energy. They knew that survival depended not only on physical strength but also on trust, teamwork, and shared knowledge. Together, they could face challenges that would be impossible alone. One day they noticed unusual markings on the rocks. They seemed to have been made by intelligent beings long gone. The humans studied them carefully, taking notes and trying to understand their purpose. Some markings looked like maps, some like warnings, and some were symbols they could not interpret. The discovery excited them. It reminded them that the universe was full of mysteries, and learning from the past could help them survive in the present. Storms became more frequent and stronger. The humans learned to anticipate them by observing clouds, wind, and temperature changes. They reinforced their shelters, tied vines and rocks together, and prepared for sudden shifts in weather. Each storm was a challenge, but they faced it calmly, using strategy rather than panic. Every challenge made them stronger, more skilled, and more prepared for the unknown dangers that the planet might present. Even amidst danger, the humans found moments of beauty. They watched glowing plants, listened to strange animals, and marveled at the colors of the sky. They realized that even a world designed to kill could hold wonder. They took time to appreciate it, knowing that hope and curiosity were as important as strength and intelligence. These moments kept their spirits alive and reminded them why they had chosen this journey. The humans became experts at moving quietly and observing carefully. They learned to read the land, understand creatures' behavior, and anticipate weather changes. They trusted each other completely, knowing that teamwork was essential to survival. They learned that intelligence, patience, and courage could overcome almost any obstacle. They survived countless dangers, mapped the terrain, and learned to use the planet's resources wisely. Each day made them stronger, wiser, and more confident. During one exploration, they encountered a large predator near a stream. It had long legs, sharp claws, and eyes that glowed faintly. The humans acted quickly, using nets and light to distract it while guiding it toward a trap. The creature struggled but eventually fled. The humans studied its behavior carefully, noting patterns and weaknesses. Every encounter taught them more about the planet and how to survive within it. The aliens observing them were increasingly impressed. They had expected fear, chaos, and failure, but instead saw calmness, intelligence, and cooperation. Humans were surviving in ways no other species could. The aliens whispered among themselves, trying to understand the humans' abilities. They had underestimated the strength of humans, not in terms of power, but in terms of resilience, adaptability, and unity. The humans discovered a hidden area filled with glowing plants and small animals. They studied the area carefully, learning which plants could provide food and medicine and which animals could be observed without danger. They mapped the location and made plans to use it as a safe zone. Every discovery, no matter how small, added to their knowledge and ability to survive. They understood that patience, observation, and careful action were essential in this hostile world. The humans also discovered caves and other hidden shelters. Some had crystals that glowed softly, providing light and warmth. They experimented with the crystals, learning how to use them without disturbing the planet's natural balance. They found small plants that could be used for food or medicine. Every discovery was carefully documented, and every lesson learned made them more capable of facing the challenges ahead. Even when things went wrong, the humans stayed calm and worked together. When a sudden rockfall blocked a path, they found another route. When a strange gas made the air heavy, they moved to higher ground. When a predator threatened one of their companions, they used teamwork to distract and escape. Each challenge strengthened their bond and reinforced the lesson that survival depended on unity, intelligence, and courage. By the end of this part of their journey, the humans had proven that survival was possible even in the most dangerous conditions. They had learned the patterns of the planet, observed countless creatures, and discovered resources that could help them live. They had turned a world designed to kill into a place where they could thrive. The aliens could no longer doubt their abilities. Humans had demonstrated courage, intelligence, and unity in a place where failure seemed certain. As the first light of dawn spread across the rugged landscape, the humans prepared for the next day. They were explorers, learners, and survivors. They were ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in spirit. They had faced impossible odds and continued to move forward, ready for whatever new challenges the Class 15 planet would bring. They had learned that survival depended not only on strength but also on intelligence, patience, courage, and trust in one another. Humans were ready for whatever came next. The humans woke to a morning that felt different. The sky was lighter, the air calmer, and a soft warmth spread across the rocky terrain. They moved carefully from their shelters, feeling a sense of accomplishment for all they had survived. Days, nights, storms, predators, and strange creatures had tested them in every way, yet they were still here, stronger, wiser, and more confident than ever. The Class 15 planet had been designed to kill, but they had endured. They had learned, adapted, and thrived. They began their exploration with the same caution they always used, but there was a quiet confidence in their movements. They had mapped much of the surrounding area, learned the behavior of many creatures, and discovered numerous resources. Every step felt purposeful, guided by the lessons they had learned from the planet itself. They knew that each day could bring new dangers, but they also knew that they could face them. Their trust in one another was complete, and that trust gave them courage and clarity. As they walked, they noticed strange formations in the rocks. Some looked like ancient carvings, others like nests or homes long abandoned. The humans approached carefully, examining the markings. They wondered about the creatures that had lived here before and how they had survived. They realized that understanding the history of this world could help them survive the present. Every detail mattered. They took careful notes and photographs, making sure to record everything without disturbing the environment. In a hidden valley, they encountered creatures they had never seen before. Some were small and timid, others large and powerful. They observed quietly, learning the habits and patterns of the animals. They noticed that even the dangerous predators had weaknesses, and they learned how to avoid confrontation or protect themselves if necessary. They realized that knowledge was their greatest weapon. By understanding the creatures and the environment, They could turn danger into opportunity and survive in ways that the aliens who had sent them could not have predicted. Night fell, and the usual sounds of the planet filled the air. Screeches, rustles, and growls echoed in the distance. The humans prepared their camp carefully, using lights and small alarms to warn of approaching predators. They huddled together, sharing warmth and stories, keeping their spirits high. They had learned that survival was as much about mental strength as physical skill. Courage, calmness, and careful observation were as vital as their tools and weapons. Every night was a test, but they faced it with wisdom and teamwork. One evening, a storm approached faster than expected. Dark clouds rolled in from the horizon and the wind began to howl. The humans acted quickly, reinforcing shelters, securing equipment, and making sure each person was safe. Rain fell in sheets and lightning flashed across the sky. They huddled together, their faces lit by the soft glow of crystals they had collected. The storm raged for hours, but they endured it. When it finally passed, they emerged to find the valley transformed. Trees had fallen, streams had shifted, and the ground was slippery and uneven. Yet they were unharmed. The storm had tested them, and they had survived. As the days passed, they found more resources to help them survive. They discovered plants with healing properties, animals that could be used for food without danger, and crystals that could provide light and energy. They learned to use these resources carefully, respecting the balance of the planet. Every discovery was a small victory, a way to make life safer and more manageable. They realized that survival was not about dominating the planet, but about understanding it and living in harmony with its challenges. They also explored caves and hidden shelters, some filled with glowing crystals. The caves provided safety from storms and predators and were a source of warmth and light. They experimented with the crystals, learning how to use them efficiently. They found small plants inside the caves that could be used for food or medicine. Every discovery added to their growing knowledge and ability to survive. They understood that careful observation, patience, and cooperation were essential on this deadly world. During one exploration, they encountered a massive predator that had been watching them from the shadows. Its eyes glowed brightly in the dim light, and it moved silently but with great power. The humans reacted calmly. They used nets, light, and careful movement to distract it, while guiding it toward a trap. The predator struggled but eventually retreated. The humans studied its behavior, noting patterns and weaknesses. Each encounter was a lesson, and each lesson made them stronger and more capable. The aliens observing them could hardly believe what they were seeing. They had expected fear, chaos, and failure. Instead, they saw humans thinking, learning, and adapting. They saw courage, intelligence, and unity. Humans were surviving where no other species could. The aliens whispered among themselves, realizing that humans had a kind of strength they could not measure with weapons or technology. Humans had something different: resilience, creativity, and the ability to work together under impossible pressure. The humans also discovered signs of intelligence from the past. Strange markings on rocks and caves hinted at previous inhabitants. They studied them carefully, trying to understand their meaning. Some markings looked like warnings, others like maps or symbols of knowledge. They realized that survival was about learning from the past as much as managing the present. Every discovery gave them new insight into the planet and its hidden dangers. They respected the lessons of history and used them to prepare for what lay ahead. Food and water remained priorities. They experimented with new plants, insects, and small creatures, testing them carefully before consuming. They shared meals, taking care to ration supplies and maintain energy. Each meal was a moment to rest, bond, and reflect on the lessons of the day. They had learned that survival depended not only on strength but also on trust, teamwork, and shared knowledge. Together, they could overcome challenges that would be impossible alone. Even in the face of constant danger, the humans found moments of beauty. They watched glowing plants, strange animals, and the colors of the sky. They realized that even a planet meant to kill could hold wonder. They paused to appreciate it, knowing that hope and curiosity were as important as strength and intelligence. These moments kept their spirits alive and reminded them of why they had chosen this journey. They understood that survival was not only about living, but also about appreciating the world around them. The humans had become experts at observing and predicting the planet. They knew which areas were safe, which plants were useful, and which creatures were dangerous. They had learned to move quietly, react quickly, and act decisively. They had developed a bond that was unbreakable. They trusted each other completely, knowing that teamwork was their greatest advantage. Intelligence, courage, and unity had turned this deadly world into a place where they could survive and learn. One morning, they noticed something in the distance. The alien observers had arrived closer than usual. The humans watched quietly, knowing they were being studied. They had already proven themselves by surviving days, weeks, and storms on this deadly planet. The aliens approached, observing their shelters, tools, and actions. But the humans were calm. They had faced every challenge the planet had presented and had learned from each one. They stood together, showing the aliens what humans were capable of. The aliens could not deny what they saw. The humans had survived in a place designed to kill. They had adapted, learned, and thrived. They had built shelters, found food and water, studied creatures, and learned the patterns of the land and weather. They had faced predators, storms, and poisonous plants and had survived every challenge. The aliens realized that they had underestimated humans. Humans had something no other species they had observed possessed: resilience, intelligence, courage, and unity. The humans prepared to leave the planet, carrying samples, notes, and knowledge they had gathered. They looked back one last time at the rugged terrain, the glowing plants, and the strange creatures they had learned to understand and respect. They knew they had changed. They had faced impossible odds and survived. They had learned lessons that would stay with them forever. They had proven to themselves and to the universe that humans could endure and thrive in places where others would fail. As they boarded their ship, the humans felt a quiet pride. They had faced one of the deadliest planets known, survived every challenge, and learned more than anyone could have imagined. The aliens watched in silence, finally understanding the strength of humans. The humans lifted off, leaving the Class 15 planet behind, carrying with them the lessons of survival, unity, and courage. They had shown the universe what humans could do. And so the humans returned to the stars, stronger, wiser, and more confident than ever. They had faced impossible odds, adapted, learned, and survived. They had turned a planet designed to kill into a place where knowledge, courage, and teamwork had allowed them to thrive. They had proven that humans could survive anywhere, no matter how deadly the world. And as they moved into the vast expanse of space, they knew that whatever challenges awaited them next, they were ready to face them together.